So I'd like to welcome Gary Crisci from GE, Principal Architect and Application Portfolio Manager. He's also an Oracle ACE Director and very active in the Oracle community. See him at all the conferences. Take it away, Gary.
Okay, thanks. And so let's get my video going here also. So let's see. Are you able to see me?
I can. Super.
Okay, fantastic. And then let's go ahead and let's see if we have our display here and share screen. Share the desktop. And how's that look?
I'm seeing it. It looks fabulous.
Okay, excellent. So let's get started. So we're going to jump in today and we're going to talk about using OAC to manage cloud instances. That's actually a little vague. I'm going to actually be talking more about portfolio management, and really the way to kind of swing this into OAC is how we work with kind of these disparate random data sets that, you know, throughout our jobs, different things that we work on, we come across different data sets, and this is even geared more towards end users, I think, than the typical IT admin. So let's talk a little bit about how we can use OAC to be a really good tool. Okay, so just a little bit about me. There'll be some contact information here if anyone wants to reach out to me after the presentation. If you have any follow-up questions, anything like that, you can feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or any of these other methods. General Electric is the organization that I work with. I think most people have probably heard of General Electric and familiar with the organization. I've been around a very long time and certainly seen its ups and downs and continues to plug along, provides a lot of really important infrastructure for the world. So we're pretty proud of the heritage. Okay, so agenda, what are we going to look at? First thing I'm going to do is introduce you to a couple quick functional concepts around this area of portfolio management. Talk about this idea of source system exports, right? So what do I do when I live in a world of I got things in spreadsheets, right? So I prefer to have everything in a nice fancy semantic data model where users can come in and just self-serve. But the reality is a lot of analysts, a lot of users, all day long they're in Excel and they're working with data sets. And even someone like myself sometimes finds myself in a situation where that's what I have available to me. So I can continue to work in Excel, or how can I benefit from a tool like Oracle Analytics, use visualizations, even though I'm starting off with just things that are basically data dumps out of another system. And then we're going to spend some time on data flows. We're going to create a data set, join those sets, do some data manipulation. Again, this is really geared towards an end user. And if you're an IT person on the phone, if you're an administrator, you should be looking at this too. How can I put this in my end user's hands so they can benefit from this tool and not have to rely on IT? Okay, so we're going to teach them a little bit of ETL, and we're going to build some visualizations to helpfully help us understand this data and make some sense of it. Okay, and then I'll take a couple questions at the end. And I think I'm good till noon. So we got a few minutes to get through this. Okay, so a couple quick high-level functional concepts. First is an APM, an Application Portfolio Manager or Application Portfolio Management. This is a framework for managing enterprise IT software applications. Okay, and this gives us the ability to kind of see what are the benefits of each application, how do they interplay with each other. This can be seen as an offshoot of enterprise architecture, and it's around really kind of understanding what is your inventory of applications that you have out there, and how do you look at them as an asset. Okay, and then we have a concept of what we call a CMDB. This is a repository that acts like a data warehouse that stores information about the IT environment. And we have various components, and we usually refer to these things as configuration items or CIs. And so you could have a business application, and then below a business application, you could have your application environments. Below those application environments, you could have servers. You could have networking switches. You could have different software attributes all associated with those CIs. The more robust your CMDB is, the better you can do at managing that environment as a portfolio manager. And again, so if you think about this as a data warehouse, OAC, very good tool for trying to work with that. You could build integrated large scale like an OBI with an RPD on top of that CMDB. But again, as an end user, that might not be an option for me. I may be working, somebody else owns that CMDB, and I just come in and I have access to that data and I have to work with it myself. Okay, so portfolio planning is kind of the other side of this. If we think about a CMDB, almost I have a financial background, so to me, CMDB is like my actuals, right? That's what's happening, that's what has happened, that's what's real, what's there. Then I have the other side of it, which is my planning, right? So what if I want to think about what am I going to do with these assets going forward? Okay, so I have tools for portfolio planning, which allow me to manage that platform. And a big one that we could think of right now is cloud migrations, right? So I have tons of applications and servers and all kinds of assets that are on premise in a local data center. And we have various initiatives to be moving those to the cloud. Some are apps are going to decommission. It's going to go to a SaaS app. It's going to become something else. A lot of cases, it's just a lift and shift, infrastructure as a service. I'm getting rid of my on-premise server and I'm going to take it into the cloud, into either whether it's Oracle, OCI, or AWS, or Azure, or pick your flavor of public provider. And lots of mixed hybrid scenarios. Some stuff running on-premise, some stuff running in a cloud. Okay, so we have a tool called Planet, which is from a company called Alphabet, that not Google, Alphabet, different Alphabet. And it's a portfolio planning tool. And you can see in some of these screenshots, I tried to just give you a flavor of some of the things we can do here. Over here on the upper left, this is an idea of how we can group our applications by business hierarchies. So I can actually make my applications into products. And that's how we view them. The application is a product that meets a need. And then that product is owned by a certain group along with other products. I could potentially group those products into projects. Maybe I have specific projects that I know are maybe a large effort to move many applications to the cloud in one sweep, one big project rather than moving each app individually. So I want to track those. And then I talk about in here, I can tag my applications with what is my hosting strategy. In this case, this is an application that is already deployed in the cloud running in Azure, okay? And then within that, we also have concepts of what are our roadmaps. So what am I doing with this application? Is it something that I'm tolerating? Is it something that I'm investing in? Is it something that I'm planning to decommission, etc.? So as you can see, there's a lot of data fields going on here. And as the portfolio manager, I need to be able to report on all of this, right? So I can go into the tool and I can look at that. And if you're familiar with like ERP reporting, right, or any system really, you could go in, but you're bound by the limits of what that system can do. So most systems do give you the opportunity to dump the data out and export it. And so if you really look across these screens here, I have this concept of I have my business hierarchy, I have my project hierarchy, I have my applications and all of these attributes that I want to track. Those are not all joined together the way I want to look at them. They're just kind of in the system as different attributes. And in here, I also have my servers, right? So if I move an app to the cloud, it's not enough to say, well, I want to move my application to the cloud. I got to think about all the infrastructure that's involved in that. Not all apps are created equal. Maybe I got a small web app that's just going to be a couple of servers when I move it. Maybe I have another one that is a massive ERP and it's 20, 30 servers and it's a very big deal to move that. So I need to be able to analyze all of that and be able to report out the information based on all these different attributes that I've collected. Okay, so I got what we do a lot of times, right? We live in a world of Excel, especially if you're an analyst. And again, I know a lot of you are IT people who are maybe scratching your head going, no, I'm going to create a semantic model and we're going to have an RPD and it's going to be controlled. And that's great when you can do it. and it works really nice. But a lot of people are hands-on and they need the ability to do both. And believe me, your users are working in Excel. So I export this data out of the system. I have all of these different attributes in these Excel or CSV files, right? And basically for this exercise, what I'm going to show you is 4 different exports, one for the apps and the attributes, the product grouping attribute that I need to join onto this so that when I look at the apps, I can view them by product. Same thing with the projects. I need to join it onto this data set. And then the servers. And the thing to keep in mind with the servers when we think about joining it and how we look at it is that for every one application, I'm going to have multiple servers. Okay, so this is now going to increase my data set. So whereas I may start off with a few thousand applications, I may have 100,000 servers that are spread across all those applications. And to make it even more complicated, and we'll talk about this when we start to build some stuff, shared infrastructure. I might have an app that, or 2 apps that use the same server. Okay, so we gotta think about how we analyze that, and that's where Excel starts to break down a little bit, right? If I say, well, how many servers am I moving? I have this app has 10 servers and this app has 10 servers, and they're both moving to the cloud. And my data center manager goes, great, you're moving 20 servers out of my data center. Love it, thank you. He's very disappointed when he finds out I only moved out 10 because both of those applications were using shared infrastructure. So we got to be able to accurately report that information. Okay, so here's what we're going to do in Oracle Analytics. I'm going to get out of PowerPoint. I'm actually going to go into Oracle Analytics. I'm going to show you real quick creating a data set. Then we're going to walk through some stuff creating a data flow. I'm also going to show you, I'll jump around because we don't have enough time to go through this step by step. I'll show you the end result data flow, and then we'll look at some reports. Okay, so we'll come back to Q&A later. So let's let's exit out of here. And now we are in Oracle Analytics, and hopefully you see Oracle Analytics on the screen. Okay, so creating data sets and different objects in OAC is very straightforward. I have this create button right off the side if I want to just get started. My hamburger menu here will bring me into different areas. If I want to go into my existing data sets, I can see that these are already existing from yesterday when I was prepping for this. Okay, in this case, we're not using connections because we're using data files. I do have a test ADW instance. For those of you who don't know, Oracle does allow you to get a free ADW instance. I was going to integrate that here, but I thought it just complicated things, and I actually really wanted to focus on how a user could just use a spreadsheet to get this done. Okay, and then we're going to talk about data flows. Data flows are very, very cool, and you're going to see why in a few minutes. And it's similar, but it's different than the data prep. Okay, so I want you to keep that in mind. If you're taking notes, write that down. Data prep and data flow are not the same thing. They do similar things, but they're not the same thing. So let's start off with a data set real quick. If I just wanted to create one, I would create a data set here. I could either drag the file or I could go look for it. Here I got those files that I showed you before, and I can just let me bring in one of the small ones. Okay. So I just click that. It's going to do some analysis of that file, make sure everything's okay. It's going to then start to give me some information. Now I could make some changes here, and this is where, let me just give this a name so we don't overwrite something that I already have. Now here, I could come in here and start using the data prep script, right? And I could say, cast this column here as a number. Right now it's picking it up as text. So I could come in here and I could change some stuff. I could add steps in the data prep. I mean, first I have to actually add the data set, then it'll give me the ability to do all of that. Okay, so I could come in here and I can start playing around with all of this. I'm not going to focus on that today because I want to focus on data flows. Okay, but if you did want to come in here and start adding steps and manipulating data, you could click the thing here. You can see convert to number to date, concatenate, replay. You got all these options here, right? What you have to understand is that the data prep scripts are kind of dynamic. They're going to fire on the data as you bring it in. Data flows are more of an asynchronous process. So for now, we created a data set. So that's great. We got a new one here. You could see similar to the ones that I created yesterday. And now those data sets are available for me to work with. So here are the 4 Excel files: projects, market products, servers, and the apps. So if I go into my data flow editor, right, I can start off by creating a new data flow. And right off the bat, I can go grab that new file that I just brought in. Where is it? It's the APM. Actually, no, it doesn't have to be the one I just brought in. Let's bring in apps, because that's the one that has a good amount of information to look at. So I go ahead and I click add, and you can see now I have a node. And if anyone's ever worked with any of the ETL tools like OBI or Informatica Power Center, or if you've ever worked with a tool like Alteryx, this is going to look very familiar. So I have a couple different panes. I have my visual canvas up here. Depending on which node in the canvas I'm on, I see information. And down here is basically showing me the output of what I get from that node. And as I work my way through the chain, this is gonna change. Okay, so right off the bat, I can uncheck some fields that I don't want. Maybe I say, I know I don't want that. That's just an index number from the source system. It's completely meaningless. And now you can see it went away. Now I could bring in, let's say I want to do some, let's see, do a field select, right? Maybe I want to actually spend a little bit more time thinking about some of these columns that I do or don't want. And let me add another data set here to show you why I would potentially want to do this. So I can drag another data set on. Let me go grab those market product groups, right? So in this report that I exported from the system, there's a lot of repeating information: company, department, configure, application name. I already have all of that in my app set. So I don't want all that. So I can uncheck it here. If I want to be a little bit more clear, I can go ahead and I can add my select columns, and I can remove all of them, and I can just add back the market products, and I'll add config ID because that's going to be my key that I join on. Okay, so now I have these. Maybe I want to rename a column. So if I add another one, maybe I add projects. And the interesting thing about projects is that in the project data set, not ready to do a join yet. Let's get rid of that. In the project data set, you see it has the same names, market product group. So that's going to cause a problem later when I join them together. So now what I can do is I can do some select columns, remove everything. I can add these back, but then I can also say, you know what? I need to rename those so that I don't have a conflict later. Okay, so instead of market product group, I'm just going to call it project. Okay, so I'm just going to copy and paste that down here, 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 and here. And now later on when I bring this in, I'm not going to have to worry about collisions. Now I can do a join. And I can say, okay, I don't want union. I want to join. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to connect to this one right now, and then we'll join to this one in a minute. So now when I click on join, I start to see I get some information here. What am I going to connect on? Now it's already picked up that config ID is my field to join on. That's great. I could add additional joins if I have a multi-field, like a compound key. In this case, I also need to pay attention to this keep rows. Okay, for those of you who are familiar with SQL, this is basically where we're defining our inner join, outer joins, left outer join, right outer join, or full outer join. Okay, so if I say both matching rows, that's an inner join. If I say all rows from input 1 and only matching rows from input 2, that's a left outer join. If I do all rows from both, that's a full outer join. You basically get it. Okay, in this case, I definitely want to keep everything from my apps, and I only want to bring in the stuff for market product here that does that. So with that, I'm gonna stop here because we just don't have enough time to keep going through. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jump over here to one that's already built out and just show you a couple other things real quick. So you can see I have cases where I had to add some additional columns. Okay, so this is a calculated field where I did a project ancestor list. And this is basically just some text concatenation of fields. Okay, I got some more here. This is an important one, portfolio. Out of the thousands of applications, how do I identify which ones are actually in my portfolio? So I have some different logic that I go through based on the ancestor lists and the departments and the CIO or the portfolio manager tagging. Okay, and then I got another one here for, this is for server OS family. So you'll see I can kind of clean that up. So anything that says Windows in it, it'll give me specifically Windows or Linux or Solaris, as opposed to giving me maybe just the, here you could see, Windows Server 2012 6.3. That's great, but what I really just want to know is it's Windows. So I'm doing some logic there. And then I save my data. Now here I have the choice to create a new data set that I can use in OAC, or I can even use this as an opportunity to save my data to a database connection. So if I was working with ADW or some other database, I can actually use this as a tool to do my data manipulation and then load the data up into my database, which I can then use to run. Okay, so I would execute that. I would run the data flow, and when that's done, it's going to create this new data set here called APM dataset 1, and then that's the new one that I can go ahead and look at and do some stuff with. Okay, and then I can start to create visualizations and some other things. So right now it's reading all the columns. There's quite a bit in there. Okay, and it's got to deal with that. And then all my columns are there. Now again, I could go back and do more data prep. If I see something that still doesn't make sense, I could come back here and I could do more data prep on this data set as well. So keep that in mind. You do have a lot of flexibility there. But I really like the asynchronous qualities of the data flow because you can really get into some more complex ETL type work. Okay, so let's go take a look at what some of these reports are going to look like now. So let's go to our catalog. So this is one that this has got a couple samples here, and then I'll show you the full data set. Or rather the full set of reports. Okay. Taking a couple seconds to cache through all of it. What is this? This is not the one I wanted to show you. Sorry, let me get out of here. Where are the ones? APM Analytics. Okay, so here's the full data set because we're actually running out of time. So let's just walk through this and I can explain to you how these are all created. Okay. So that's opening up, and let's come back over to app count. So the first thing I can start to do is I pull together some visualizations and I start building dashboards. One of the first things I had to do was I had to create some calculated members. So if I come here and I look at this app count member, I should be able to edit it. Yep. So I have count distinct for CI. So I'm using that from the aggregate. So I'm able to create calculated members. Now, you could say, well, why didn't you just do that in the ETL job, in the data flow? That would give me a very static number that would always just aggregate up. But in this case, I want a distinct count. This is particularly important with the server counts. Remember, I said some apps share a server. So if in the ETL job, I just said server count, put a 1 for every unique server name, I would be overcounting by applications, but by using it dynamically in the visualization, I'm able to get the correct number. So you can see we have some different visualizations here that show us which market products have the most applications. Here's the total count. Here are the ones. I put a filter on this one. So if I click on this tile, you can see I dragged a filter in here for hosting rehost status. It tells me deployed. So I know that out of the 354 that I'm working with, 47 are already in the cloud. Okay, and I have some other filters up here that I've thrown in, things that I want to keep out of here. I want to focus on my portfolio. I don't want to look at retired applications. I don't care about those, and some other attributes. And here's a breakdown of kind of where we are based on the hosting status. Then I can dig into those server counts. Okay, similar types of views. Who is the target provider? Where is it going? Okay, application count versus server count. This kind of highlights that thing that I was mentioning before. If I see, 29% of my applications are excluded from moving to the cloud for whatever reason, that only accounts for about 22% of my servers because of that shared infrastructure issue. Things like server location, I'm able to do. Let me see if I got some other visualizations that look a little different here. Yeah, here's a different type of correlation map. Let's see, target type to provider. Another good one, Sankey charts, very interesting. Shows me, a lot of my infrastructure as a service is going to Azure. GE has a contract with Microsoft through our GE Digital entity to move a lot of our infrastructure there. So that's why you see a lot of that going in that direction. I like this. This kind of tells me, based on which product, what is the explanation, and you can start to see certain groups jump out above other groups, right? Like these guys, the EPM shared service and the total company finance systems are in progress. That's great. These guys in the data lake and integration services haven't made up their mind yet. A lot of possible candidates. Okay, so at the end of the day, this kind of gives us this outline of all of these different data elements. Here's the narrative. I didn't type this. This is dynamically generated by the AI that's in OAC. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to show you here is I can take all these views, I could put them into this narrate step, which kind of gives me almost like this PowerPoint presentation kind of feel, where I can set up each one of these. I could go into my present mode, which is going to put everything in full screen. I'm able to put some notes at the top to give people context, and then I can click through these reports. So now I'm able to sit down with leaders and senior executives and say, here's where we are, here's how many apps I have in this portfolio, here's how many are in the cloud, here's how many are in this data center, and where we stand as far as what we think is going to happen with them in their migration. So I'm able to take all this information from those 4 simple Excel files and generate this book of information that I can share with executive leaders. And I can export this out to, I can print it, I can dump it to a PDF file, or even a PowerPoint if I want to add more to it, right? So I can go to PDF, I can say make it all pages, right? And I can save that, and then that's going to generate a PDF book for me that I can email to leaders to give them updates on a regular basis. So what you see here is the ability to use OAC as an end user to really generate useful information out of a case where maybe I just had some Excel reports, I have things locked up in a legacy system, and I need to figure out how to use that information and not rely on someone in IT to have to go and say, okay, we'll go integrate with this system and go do all this ETL prep work and run these batches every night. I can control my own destiny, and you should really put that in the hands of your end users as well. Let them export what they want, create their own data sets, they can share them, and it's a very useful way to use the tool. So with that, I'm at noon. I think do we have time for any questions? What are we doing?
Yeah, Gary, that was fantastic. Actually, we don't have a bunch of questions. There was just one. How do you end up with your end users? How do you end up training your users to use this, and what was required of that? And then I'm going to have to move on. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the things I can say is that, and maybe I'm not the best person to ask because I've been working with tools like this for a long time, but I think anyone who is really good in Excel, if you do a couple of sessions similar to this, a little bit slower paced, but you do some internal, what we do like lunch and learn sessions where we have people jump on a Teams call or a Zoom call, and we walk them through. Your people who know Excel pretty well should be able to pick this up without too much difficulty. Those data flows are not overly complex. It's actually harder to do a lot of that stuff in Excel. Anyone who's done nested ifs in Excel more than 2 or 3 knows it can get pretty ugly. Microsoft has actually improved on that a bit with if-s, but it's, you know, if you're a good Excel jockey, OAC is going to be much easier to learn. And so I think, like I said, you do some lunch and learns, and you get that, do a couple recordings, and people will pick it up.
So one other question came in. Are you doing any predictive analytics on OAC?
I haven't been using it right now for that. I've played with it, but I haven't used it in terms of actual use case at this point. I definitely like what I see. I think it's powerful, but I just got to spend some more time with it myself.
Well, thanks so much, Gary. Great. I think people were kind of blown away. You get the award for the live demo and showing the product off well. So thank you so much for sharing that today. See you at the conferences when we can get together again.
Looking forward to it. I hope we just to see everybody again in the near future.
Thanks so much.